Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, the show that gives you a virtual seat at the bar for the real conversations that happen between entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing all kinds of business owners, from those just a few years into freelancing to CEOs helming 9-figure companies. If you've ever worried that everyone else just seems to get it and you're missing something or messing things up, this show is for you. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and let's get to it. And welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is my friend Tania Yeo. Say hi.
Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I'm from Singapore, but I live in Tbilisi, Georgia. I thought I was going to be a digital nomad, but then those dreams were dashed very quickly and there's scramble for a new plan for things to do with my life. I became a copywriter. And now I write financial copy for Stansberry Research. And on the side, I also like to help teachers learn more about, breaking into copywriting and leveraging their existing skills and talents in this new career, which is why I also have a podcast of my own where I've interviewed teachers who have gone on this journey.
That's awesome. Okay, so you said something that I can't help but dig into. You were going to be a digital nomad and those dreams were dashed. Are you open to talking about that a little bit more?
Yeah, of course. It's really funny. So I left Singapore after my teaching contract ended in 2021. And this was before there was that Omicron surge. So it was actually pretty difficult to get out of the country and to find a place that both my partner and I could be in. We were going to go to Thailand. That's actually one of my favorite countries in the world. I started learning Thai. I could speak Thai for a while, but the Thai government wouldn't get their shit together. And they were flip-flopping on all the rules. So we were like, hey, what about this place in the middle of nowhere in Eastern Europe called Georgia? And we were like, yeah, sure, why not? And it's a thing, I brought my cat along. So that already makes it kind of difficult to hop from one country to another. Although for all of the stress that went into preparing my cat for customs, not a single person looked at my binder of his vaccinations and his certs. No one cared that I was carrying a cat. They were just trying to keep the line moving. So he's 14 this year. He's pretty old. And when we got here, he started getting asthma because he didn't used to live indoors. And then we're living in an apartment. Plus, when we got here, it was still locked down. So we were locked down for a few months. That's actually when I spent all that time studying copywriting. But yeah, as time went by, I realized I wanted to be a digital nomad because I was so unhappy as a teacher. And Singapore will always be my home country with lots of dear friends there. But there's just a lot of things about it. It's not conducive to a queer person like me, a person who, there's a lot of things that Singapore wants its people to be that I cannot be. So, but the moment I left, that desire to want to travel the world and keep moving from place to place, that went away. I didn't mind staying put in a very beautiful country with very beautiful people, wonderful people I've met here. And being with my cat, getting better at my craft, getting better at copywriting. I joke that I'm a digital stay put because I'm not leaving for any amount. I'm probably not leaving anytime soon.
Oh, that's so great. Well, and that there's a couple of different things that I took away from that. One, I've got a lot of questions recently about being a digital nomad. I had a video series for Huffington Post go a little bit viral, and those were the top 2 questions that people had, what do you do for work? How do you manage the logistics of travel? And what do you do with your cat? And so that's fine. You're literally the only person that I've spoken to that knows what it means to move around with a cat. Although I haven't had to cross borders with her yet. And now I have 2. So that's going to be an issue, but whatever.
Now I have 2 also.
Yeah. They tend to multiply.
I adopted a Georgian cat here who jumped out at us in the middle of a forest. And we had to bring her home. So yeah, it's going to be, if we want to move around, we have to actually commit to a new location. We can't
Mhm.
just like, oh, let's try another part of Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, the universal cat distribution system at work, right? It's so funny. Like one of the people that latched on to me was like, I really wish you would have created a more stable environment for your cat while you were traveling. And I was like, you are also going to yell at me for giving up my cat to travel. So like, there's no winning with people like you. I didn't say that to this person. I basically said some people travel with cats, and I happen to be one of them. Like I do everything in my power to make her comfortable, and she adjusts. And hey guys, we're going off on a tangent on traveling with cats, but you already know this. Um, well, and I think like the other thing that's interesting to me is that like in business and in life, we put a lot of pressure on these decisions to be the decision, right? And so I can foresee an instance where it's like, I'm going to be a digital nomad. I need to get out. I really loved and want to celebrate and highlight the fact that you said, I got here and realized, I like this place. I think I'll stay put. And I've talked to a lot of people that are like, I could never be a digital nomad because I just can't handle life on the road. Totally cool. Then there are a lot of people that kind of overthink it, worry about it. I'm definitely one of those people, so there's no judgment here. But like, you can actually have one thing in mind, get to the first stop, and be like, "That's it. Plans can
Yeah.
change. You can become and redefine yourself as a digital stay put instead of a digital nomad." I love that.
Yeah, because like people ask like which country are you going to next, and I realize I'm never going. Not at least for a while. Like we actually start looking at our next place here. Like we're just looking for the next place, maybe somewhere a bit bigger. I used to have a punching bag back in Singapore. I miss having stuff like that. So yeah, we'll see. Totally
Awesome.
open.
Is there a big or is there a connected nomad or expat community there of people that you can talk to? Or have you like made local friends?
There is, and we have met with a few. Funny thing is we literally like threw a stone in the middle of nowhere and just ended up in a neighborhood that we've completely fell in love with. It's very convenient, but there's also like this is an actual forest park. Like the government here cleared the land around it to build the town, but the forest stayed as it was. So it's not like a manicured park. It's you walk into it, you feel like you're in the woods, and it's just a few steps away from where I live. So it's been really hard for us to move closer to a city where the expats are. But yeah, we do events. It takes like 45 hours to get 45 minutes to get to town,
which can feel like 45 hours sometimes. So
my socialization here is mostly through when I go to a park and my cat. So the cat is back in this conversation.
No apologies necessary. Cat time.
He's the conversation piece. Like he's the icebreaker. Like I've had the most adorable like older like Georgian grandpas and grandmas just come up to me and try to speak to me in Russian and bond over cats.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, and it's funny that you said, people were saying shit about you bringing Stella up and about because, like, cats have different preferences. My cat loves to go adventuring in the woods more than his actual, like the cat who came from the woods, the other cat that we adopted. She's afraid of the woods, but he is from, the city, and he's like, I'm going to show you the way in this forest, and he'll lead us to this forest. So yeah, that's my, my strange little life that I've created here in Tbilisi.
I think that's awesome. Well, yeah, and like clearly the people that have very strong opinions about cats who travel haven't seen all the videos of like cats that sit in bicycle baskets and go on hikes and live on sailboats, right? Like just like humans, pets can adapt, and I would much rather take her with me and find a way to help her adapt, her and her brother Oliver now, than give them up for adoption. This is not a Sarah McLachlan commercial, I promise, guys. It's so very rare that I get to talk to somebody else that travels and has a cat and like understands the logistics of managing that and the weirdness of like people and their opinions about having your cat out in a public space. Because Stella walks on a leash too, and I have And I've been out in like rest areas on long driving days and given her a chance to like stretch her legs and walk and eat grass, which she freaking loves. And for, this is this makes me laugh every single time. I'm sorry if this is you, but I love fucking with people who go, "Is that a cat?" No, it's a fish.
It's
Like, of
amazing.
course it's a cat. You just used your eyes to ascertain it was a cat, and then you asked me the obvious. What? How do you expect me to answer this, my friends? It is a cat on a leash. That happens. So you started as a teacher, and then you moved into this field of copywriting. I've talked on the show before about what copywriting is, but if you are new to this, it's basically like marketing writing, sales focused writing, right? It's a specialty, it's a sub niche of being a writer. Right. You're not going to see our novels on the shelves, but you're probably going to see our commercials or our emails or things like that. What turned you on to this from teaching? That seems like such a left turn.
Failure. Failure turned me onto this because, well, failure and pigeonholing myself, which, now that I've interviewed so many teachers for my podcast, one thing that a lot of us have in common, I'm not saying it's like everyone's experience, is that we don't know what we can do outside of teaching. We don't realize that teaching is a bunch of discrete skills that actually apply across so many different fields. So we all, like a lot of us, start off in teaching adjacent careers. So for me, I was like, well, what can I do as a digital nomad? And I remember I actually had a tab open on my computer for many months after I left teaching that I didn't want to read. It was like top 20 jobs for digital nomads. And I didn't want to read that because I was afraid, like, number one, I'm not going to see anything I like. And number two, they're not going to pay well. Yeah. So I was terrified of what was going to happen next for me. And, and I was juggling multiple life transitions, right? Leaving the country, figuring out what's next. It was only when I got to Tbilisi, I had that peace and quiet. I was like, okay, so what's really next? Then I finally read the article and they were like, oh, you can tutor English online for like $20 an hour. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. I'll that's another thing. Like, after leaving teaching, a lot of teachers feel like they have to recertify themselves and gather more paper qualifications. So I did that. I got my teaching English as a foreign language cert, even though English is like my first language my whole life. Like, I still felt like I had to prove myself. Yeah. Anyway, the whole, like, when I was finally ready to start the whole thing, I think there was some kind of regulation coming out of China, and that was like the biggest market at the time. Those were the clients who were paying $20 an hour to, they hire you to teach your kids English. There was some new regulation where they banned foreign tutors. Yeah. So
Interesting.
when I started looking around, I was like, oh my God, the pay per hour is getting lower and lower and not at all what I expected. And I remember copywriting was the other thing on that list. And I was like, well, I don't know what that is, but it sounds intriguing. I don't know why it's called copywriting. Like, what's the difference between that and writing? Then I fell down that rabbit hole. So it was actually ironically my backup plan. But I'm so glad that, that's what I turned to instead. And that I did. Yeah, I talked to so many other teachers now, and they all have much more well-planned transitions. And I know mine is like super chaotic, and that's just, I embrace that for the journey that it was.
Glad that you brought up that and that you're highlighting that as well, because I think a similar thing, I got more organized over time, but when I hit the road, it was chaos because it was the same thing. It was a life transition. It was a reaction to a situation that, I didn't see coming, and it was, okay, well, cool. I can't control what just happens, but I can control what happens next. Here's what I'm going to do. I don't know anything about living life on the road. I don't know anything about traveling with a cat. I'm going to have to figure out some of this. I don't know anything about running my business while I'm figuring out all of these things at the same time, right? Some of these things you just have to throw yourself into and trust yourself to figure out. But I love the fact that you mentioned, okay, so you knew the thing was digital nomadism, that you needed to leave and find another place to be. And I just thought it was so fascinating that you're like, I had the article open, but I wouldn't read it because I was afraid of what I would see. And that just, that hit me right in the gut. It was like, how many of us have made a decision and gone, okay, I know I have the ability to find out more over here, but I'm scared of what I'm going to see. So I'm going to avoid that and do other things for now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't regret any of that. Those were, I was definitely burnt out after I left teaching, and I spent those months. So I trained as an artist, and I was an art teacher and literature teacher. So I just spent those months like drawing nonstop and finally making art that was for me, not for like a national exam, not to teach kids, but like make art for me. So, even though I was definitely, there was like, not to be dramatic, but it was a lot of like turmoil at the time. But now I look back and it's like, yeah, Tania had to do that, to get to the next stage.
Yeah. That's I found that interesting because I was looking. I sent out a questionnaire, guys, for everybody that books a spot on the show, and it's mostly to give guests peace of mind, because if they don't know what they're going to talk about, it tends to be a little bit of like anxious back and forth messaging, like, oh my gosh, how do I prepare for this? And I don't ask all of the questions. Sometimes I do when I get a super interesting answer, but I try to keep it to, we're just having it. It's you and me having a discussion. We met at a bar and I want to know more about you. So now you're getting to see a little bit of the background for everybody that's listening. One of the questions that I ask is, if you had advice to a younger you, what would it be? And I think you're the only person that I can remember saying, I don't have advice. I think the way that everything turned out is what was needed to get me here with the level of understanding I have. I share that philosophy with you. Like, I think the only thing I would say to a younger me is trust yourself. But like I do believe that everything happens because there was some sort of lesson that I needed to learn to be able to move on to the next step. And here we are.
Yeah. And even if I had given my younger self advice, that person wouldn't have listened, because that person is super stubborn and is still stubborn.
Ain't that the damn truth? I'm fond of being that older jerk now these days when I talk to people in their teens and their 20s and go, oh God, man, I remember when I knew everything. That was such a great time. Talk to me a little bit about the transition then. So you discover copywriting, you throw yourself into that. What was that process like?
Yeah, so I think I remember thinking like, yeah, okay, the whole process up to this point was kind of chaotic, and I'm never trusting random articles on the internet again. I need to talk to real people, So there was that. And there was also, I remember feeling really scared because my parents, they're older, and Omicron was going about everywhere, not just Singapore. And I was like, I need to make sure, like, financially I can, take care of them, can get my shit together. So I fortunately at the time there were some like well-paying tutoring jobs, but from Singapore. So I managed to get myself connected with that as a financial cushion. And I was like, okay, I'll do that for, I think it was like maybe 10 hours a week. I'll do that. And all the other time is like, okay, let's figure out what copywriting is. So I think the first community I joined was this online Discord run by now my friend. I just met him in Nashville, Sean McIntyre, and a few other people. So it was very helpful. Like, even if I didn't interact with him as much, he's the first teacher turned copywriter I ever met. It was the first time I was like, it was this boost of confidence, like, oh, like teachers can do this pretty successfully, because he was also a financial copywriter. And I spent a lot of time lurking and just like reading what he wrote. And then it only when I felt like I had a question that he hadn't answered already, because like most of the time when I see these pretty successful people online, I'm amazed that they're even around to answer our questions. Which is why I was so grateful when I got my promotion. Sorry, jumping ahead. Got my promotion at Cardone, and I messaged you about what it takes to be a copy chief. I was so grateful. You took the time to answer. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm always like, no one online owes us these things, right? And I'm always grateful for all these people I meet along the way, where they share their advice generously. Yeah, so I talked to them. I remember and his advice was read one piece of copy a day, write one piece of copy a day, and come up with one idea a day. And I did that for 3 months until I couldn't tell if what I was doing was any good. And I was like, okay, I think I need to, talk to more people, maybe get eyes on my copy. And that's how I found Copy Chief. And then I think that just kind of accelerated everything from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the power of having good feedback and good support. And I think it's a big kind of societal struggle too. It's hard to know how to get feedback, how to give feedback. And that's one thing I've ranted about with the folks that I've coached in the past, right? We can't get feedback from people who don't have a clue what the hell they're talking about. And we see people around that. I know I see newer entrepreneurs doing that every damn day of the week. I have a business idea. Mom, what do you think? Mom has been an employee for the last 40 years. Mom has strong opinions based on being an employee, not a business owner. So you've got to, first of all, develop a filter for who you need feedback from. Ideally, it should be somebody who has done successfully the thing that you are trying to do so that they can give you the appropriate feedback. Then, even then, you're still going to get people who are so uncomfortable with giving feedback that they might give you something that is totally not useful. You have to develop your discernment and go, okay, well, I'm glad I asked that person for help, but I'm not going to be able to use this. That's cool. Thank them for that and move on to the next thing, right? Because not everybody gives kind of quick advice. And I try to come at that with a place of compassion. I know this seems a little bit rambly, but like if I ask somebody for feedback and they give you, well, like just kind of do this, I know that person hasn't thought critically about this. Maybe they haven't had time to organize that process. They don't know how to communicate the thing that they do. They're anxious about advising me wrong, so they're kind of keeping it at a high level on purpose. I always assume positive intent, not that they're trying to withhold information or screw me over or anything like that. And a lot of folks they're scared to give feedback. And this is part of the process, especially if you're going to start a creative service business. Feedback is the name of the game. If you are doing services for other people, the clients are going to have feedback. The people on their team are going to have feedback. You're going to have to give feedback internally to your team. It's just part of the process. So the earlier that you can subject your work to feedback from people who have the expertise and the caring and concern to help you get better, the faster you're going to accelerate that learning curve. There's my feedback rant for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because, when I was in the early stages of talking to other people, a lot of people were saying that you don't need to spend a dime to become a copywriter, which, okay, now that I'm on like 2 years on the other side, like that makes no sense to me. So you think that you are worthy, you want someone to pay you for your copywriting services, but to learn this from someone, especially an actual human being on the internet, like their time is not worth compensation. That made no sense to me.
Yes. Well, and also there's this ridiculous idea that, again, so you're a creative person and also you're having to do creative work for money for someone else. That requires you to people. You have to be a good peopler. So if you're already going into this going, I'm not going to hire people to help me get good at this, like what kind of mindset are you bringing to your relationships with people that are paying you money? And to a certain extent, I agree with people that you don't necessarily have to pay a dime, but I need to add that caveat, necessarily, right? And then I need to add the appropriate context and say, you don't have to pay to get good at copy if you are being paid, i.e. you got yourself a copy job where training is part of the arrangements, right?
Yeah.
You can't just throw out half-baked, half-assed advice like that. You don't have to pay somebody to get good at copy. You either need to be paid to get good at copy or you need to pay someone to get good at copy. This shit doesn't happen in a vacuum. End rant.
Yeah. Yeah. Because so I joined Copy Chief. I knew I was going to do financial copywriting.
Mm-hmm.
And I paid our friend Joshua Lee Henry to look over the stuff I was going to submit for, the program that we have in Copy Chief, World of Financial Copywriting. And, there was this opportunity to get a gig with his company. So I paid him to look over my copy. If I hadn't done that, I would have just gone on for months and months just writing practice copy. But on that call, he was like, you need to get hired. Stop practicing, start connecting with people, start applying to jobs. And without that kind of feedback, I would have been in the dark. Was my copy perfect? No. Like he had line edits, he had very helpful comments. But overall, he's like, you're ready. Everything else you can learn on the job. I could have
Mm,
wasted, because this was in April of like the April after I quit teaching. I could have just gone on and on in the dark for the rest of that year, not knowing when I'm
hmm.
ready to start applying to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a very powerful moment for me.
And I want to celebrate you for that, because that could have been a moment where the cycle repeated itself, right? I won't look at that article for fear of what I see. I won't ask somebody for feedback for fear of what I hear. I won't put myself out there for that role or for that job because I'm afraid I'm not good enough. At some point, you've got to decide, well, I hear you, brain. I know that we're scared to do this thing and that you're just trying to protect me. I got to go see what I'm made of. I got to see what I need to do to be ready for this opportunity. And that's not going to happen as long as I sit here spiraling out by myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that tied back to what you said. You said, I'm going to jump ahead and I reached out to you when I got hired. I'd love to fast forward into that experience. So like you got a job at a good place. Actually, you got a couple of gigs at different places. And in one instance, you did such great work and you accelerated so fast that you found yourself being offered a promotion to basically run the team. And I remember that when you reached out to me, that there were a lot of fears around that too, because like, who am I to run this team? I don't have nearly the experience. I've got these other people that I work with that do have a lot more experience. And do you want to tell me a little bit more about like your side of that and what made you reach out to me?
Yeah. So it was really funny. I started out at this company as a junior copywriter. You once released a training on how to be a good copy chief, meaning someone who, chiefs the team's copy and then looks over the copy of other copywriters. So I just set up a call with management and I was like, hey, so this was what was discussed previously. Here's actually put together kind of a pitch deck for myself.
Nice.
Like, here's everything I've done for the company. It was one of the most terrifying, but also empowering things I've ever done. Like, you look back, like, wow, in just like 6 months I've been here, here's all the revenue I've generated for you. Here are all the ideas I have for your business. And here's where I think, I can really make an impact as a senior copywriter. And then a few weeks later, the copy chief just said in complete passing, like it was just a one-on-one call. He was like, okay, so we got to get this stuff done. And also I think I'm going to promote you to assistant copy chief so you can help me out with like overseeing all of these projects. We got to get lots of projects out in this month. And I was like, wait, hold up. What do you say? I was just talking to you about being a senior copywriter and you're talking about something else entirely.
Yeah. Casually threw that out. Thank you, sir.
I want you to help, you're a very organized person. You understand this business very well. I really would like to have you in my corner as we roll out all of the new projects that I have in mind. And I was just like, I didn't say anything, but my face was probably like, you're insane. And I was like, okay, I'll get back to you. I think maybe I rewatched your training on how to be a good copy chief. I really loved it because you emphasize all these other skills that really have nothing to do with someone's copywriting prowess. It's a lot of other things too. It's like people skills from that I have from being a teacher. And then there's organizational skills and all of that. But I was still, and I remember, this was after this is the first time we met, right? In St. Pete. And I remember I was sharing an idea for this whole classroom to copy thing. And I was like, who am I to help teachers? And you're like, who says experience has to be a factor in any of this or something like that? You're like, what does the number of years have to do with your ability to help the people you want to help? And it was in the same vein that I reached out to you because I was like, Angie would understand. Yeah, so that was what's going through my head at the time.
That's fascinating. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I want to unpack that a little bit too. Like I was even in a copywriting group And by the way, I think you did a great job of explaining Copy Chief, and all of this stuff is relevant. I know that this is a show for entrepreneurs, but I also see the entrepreneurial journey as one of finding your path forward. And sometimes that means going through employment. Sometimes that means having a couple of, long-term retainer clients. The journey looks like something different for everybody, right? And I really want to eliminate the shame that comes with, okay, I'm working a job. That means I'm not an entrepreneur. I disagree with every fiber of my being. You can still be working on figuring out what your own thing, like you work as, did you, I don't know if I even checked. Did you get that promotion to assistant copy chief?
Yeah, I did.
Yes. So you're working as an assistant copy chief. You've got all of these gigs going. You're doing your podcast. I see that as super entrepreneurial. So I just wanted to get that out of the way for anybody that might be curious. And then, I was in a conversation in this copywriting community where somebody said, "How many years do you have to have for senior?" And I was like, I mean, generally speaking, you want to have probably more than 5. But it doesn't really matter what the years are, so long as you have the experience, the trial by fire, and the understanding that it takes. Some people are able to do that very fast in a couple of months. Some folks, like me, are a little bit more stubborn, and they have to learn the same things by bashing their heads against the wall over and over and over again before they figure out their way forward. It's a guideline. Stop holding yourself back artificially because you think you're not ready because you haven't done a certain number of years. The years are bullshit. The experience matters. And that's why, when we had our conversation, I do distinctly remember saying things like, there are other people on the team that are more senior, right? And that role was not offered to them. My instinct is to assume that there was a reason and there was a thought process and there was a rationale behind that. Because just like I assume positive intent with people who, may or may not meet my expectations or my requests, I also assume that people have thought about the decision that they're going to make. Sometimes that's not accurate, but most of the time, yes, people have thought about something before they make an offer. So me coming to them and being like, "Are you sure about this?" is a little bit of a, yes, I'm sure. I have thought about this. I don't know where I was going with that rant other than, yeah, the number of years versus the actual qualifications and the real trial by fire and actually having done the work. To me, no.
Yeah.
Experience counts.
Experience and initiative. I
Yes.
think one of my strengths is just being able to see the opportunity in every moment to offer more value. And it's, once you open your eyes to that, it's everywhere,
Yes.
ways to be even more useful to your client, to your business, to over deliver, and the willingness to do that. I think that counts a lot more than a lot of people realize. Yeah.
And it's so fun. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, about how it's so easy to kind of get wrapped up in the societal nonsense of what providing value looks like, what entrepreneurship looks like, that you miss the forest for the trees, right? Somebody was asking me, how do you get really close to a guru? And I said, first of all, no shame in that game. I had to ask once too, because I'm over here going, I'm doing everything in my power to get this person's attention. How do I get this person's attention? There are things that you can do of value that are incredibly valuable for people that you think might not ever even see you. So, like, for instance, somebody asked me when I used to work for Jeff Walker, how do I get Jeff's attention? I said, the number one way to get his attention is to launch. He teaches how to launch. If you launch and you get some sort of results or you have some sort of learning or it impacts your life in a positive way, we share all those stories with him, and he may read that and he may decide to reach out and ask you about that. The number 2 way that you get his attention is not by cornering me in a dark ballroom and insisting that I just book 5 minutes with him because you've got a story that'll change his life. Ask me how many times I've heard that particular nonsense pitch. No judgment on you if you have that, but it's not well thought out enough. And just begging me for time is not enough. You know what you can do to be useful? You can make the community a great place to be. You can go in there and you can help people and be like, I've been studying Jeff's book, and this is one thing that I learned that I'm about to try. Do you want to be accountability buddies? I promise the team is starting to pay attention. And when the team notices your name, then the guru notices your name too, because the team is talking about you and like, well, I was going to go in and answer this question, but Tania jumped in and was right on top of it. And so, I mean, all of this, I think, ties into the level of experience. Getting somebody, quote unquote, importance attention doesn't mean that you have to work your way up to be like of equal level of importance before you've earned the right to talk to them. You can be valuable in their community by showing them that you have used their work and had some success. That helps them in their business, right? You can be
Yeah.
a valuable asset to their community by helping other people find success, which also grows this person's business, which like this is a win-win type situation. There's lots of ways to get these things done without just putting in hours and hours and hours of meaningless grind.
Hmm.
Value is subjective. It's different for everybody. And it doesn't mean that I have to figure out how to cobble together $1 million in order to get somebody to listen to me.
Yeah.
I wish I had learned that a lot earlier than in my career. I would have saved myself so much effort in being like such a try hard and going so over the top trying to impress people when really all I needed to do was show up and help people. Ask good
Yeah.
questions, answer good questions, like
Yeah.
be helpful.
Questions, especially. And the type of questions says a lot about the person that you are, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. That's such a good thing. Like we could probably spend a whole entire hour just talking about questions themselves and what separates a good question from a not so good question. I won't say a bad question. Um, Although I guess there are bad questions in the like, how do I start a business? That's a bad question because that's just like, it's so impossibly broad that I could write, 20 books and teach several university courses to get to the crux of how do I start a business and still not give you the information that you need. Asking a good question means something specific, usually. Like, okay, I am looking for help from a mentor. I want to hire a mentor, for instance. What do you look for in a good mentor? What should I keep my eyes out for? Not like, where are the mentors? Right? Does that make any
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, it
like
does.
riffing now. I'm sure.
Because like I think I no, it makes total sense. The reason I said that the type of question someone asks says a lot about who they are is because as I've gotten busier over time, I have to be more discerning, like what questions do I answer? And I tend to pay more attention to questions that show that first, like you said, the specificity and that person actually has an understanding of who they're talking to, and is trying to build a relationship and
Mm-hmm.
not just coming up to a stranger on the internet with a big ask
Yes.
out of nowhere. Yeah.
Oh, that's such a good point too. Like a big ask. A big ask, if I don't know you, is asking me to connect you to a big. So that 5 minute conversation that the people that cornered me in the back of the ballroom, they were making a big ask. They were asking
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
to stake my reputation on this person I don't know, getting them attention and an audience with a person who signs my paychecks. Like you're not just asking me for an introduction, you are asking me to vouch for you. And if you don't understand the nature of that ask, then yeah, of course you're not going to get the response that you're hoping for. There's also folks that like when they want to start a business, and if this is you because you're on the newer end of the spectrum, okay, all of my love. We all start somewhere and we all make these mistakes, so there's zero judgment. But if you come up to me with that question of how do I start a business, I'm going to ask you something like, how do I buy a house? I need some information. What kind of business? Where at? Physical, dirt,
Yeah. Yeah.
dirt, digital, virtual, service based.
Don't get someone else to figure out your context for you. Like,
Yes, yes, yes. Come to the table with context, and you're much more likely to get your questions answered. And that ties back perfectly to the one that I actually wrote it down and I circled it because I wanted to make sure to circle it back. Make the ask, right? Even if you're afraid you don't have enough context or if it's not right, because you never know when somebody will be inspired to respond, right? When you reached out to me, you had such a specific ask, and I was just like, yeah, absolutely. You are qualified for this. Like, let's talk about this. But not a single one of us got anywhere without help. And a lot of that help was free, unpaid, absolute generosity from people who have gone
mm-hmm.
before, who also got generosity and attention paid to them for people that have gone before. So there are a lot of us out there that not only respect the tradition, but believe it's our duty to, okay, I got to a certain level. It's my duty to send the elevator back down to bring more people up here with me. So there you
Yeah,
go.
definitely.
My little rants. Holy crap. Have we already been talking for almost an hour? I just looked at it and was like, I have so many more questions, but I have to wrap it up.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh man, I think we're just gonna have to book a follow-up so we can rant more about questions and getting help and accelerating your learning curve. Like this is all fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for being on the show. Tell us a little bit more where we can find out about you, about the podcast.
So you can listen to my podcast on my website. It's tania-yeo.com. I'm sure Angie will have the link in the show notes. And that's pretty much it. I don't have much of an online presence for now, but I'm always happy to, if you have a specific ask, I'm always happy to interact with my readers. Yeah. And I look forward to meeting any, especially teachers out there who are thinking of becoming copywriters. Those are my people, and I love helping them, and I love hearing from them.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. You are absolutely right. I'll make sure that there's a clickable link in the show notes. And thank you again for being such a fantastic guest.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's all for now. If you want to keep that kick-ass energy high, please take a minute to share this episode with someone that might need a high-octane dose of "you can do it." Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Permission to Kick-Ass podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you stream your podcasts. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and I'm here rooting for you. Thanks for listening, and let's go kick some ass.